Welcome to part 2 of episode 7 of the Seed Growers Podcast. I'm Dan Brisebois, and this is my conversation with Frank Morton of Wild Garden Seeds about saving lettuce seed. In this episode, you're going to hear just about everything you need to know to save lettuce seed. And if you want to hear more from Frank Morton, you can go back and listen to the first part of this episode where we talked more about Frank Morton's farm and the evolution of Wild Garden Seeds over the years. I think at this point of the conversation, I'd love to start talking more technical about a crop or two. And we, before, by email, we talked about maybe about discussing lettuce and zinnias. So why don't we talk about lettuce?
The whole life cycle.
And I guess the whole life cycle, and really from the eyes of a seed grower, and maybe some of the key things that you've learned and that you think people should know about.
All right. Well, lettuce is kind of my totem plant. I don't know why. I like to say that when lettuce is happy, I'm happy, in terms of temperature and whatnot. Not too cold, not too hot, not too wet, not too dry. So lettuce, we start lettuce by transplant. South of here a little bit, down in southwestern Oregon, they can direct seed lettuce in March and get good crops. I can't do that here. If I direct seed lettuce, my crops will always be late. So we start lettuce in the greenhouse. We start them in cell flats, and I like to have choices. I like to have the plants with the most seedling vigor that they can have, because I think seedling vigor is a trait, and I think that organic growers need seedling vigor to be successful. So I like to put 3 seeds per cell, and then you keep the one that comes up first, which, so that's ends up, you're setting yourself up for some days of thinning, but that's okay because it's going to be raining in Oregon anyway, and you need something to do. So that's your first selection. This whole thing that I'm describing now in lettuce, it's a combination of growing the crop and selecting for quality in the final seed at the same time. So anyway, that's the first thing we do is select the best out of 3. Then out of that flat, we're going to throw out about 10% of the seedlings that are the weakest. We transplant them out 1 foot apart, 3 rows on a bed, 16 inches between the row. I have also done it in 2 rows at 9 inches apart, with 2 feet between the rows. It's the same number of plants either way. I am not sure which one yields the most. I can't settle on which way is the best way to do it. 2 rows is much easier to harvest. 3 rows just looks like more seeds. Seed yields to me are so fluctuating for so many reasons, including the wind, the birds, and all other kinds of things that have nothing to do with the actual yield that the plant produced. I'm just no good on figuring these things out. So you can I think you can do it either way. I think you'll get about the same yield, 2 rows or 3 rows. 2 rows is easier to harvest. Okay, so as it's growing, I mark my favorite plants. I like to mark a bunch of favorite plants, at least 20 or so, 27, 40, when they're at their market stage, when they look the best. But that's not the end of selection, because I know from experience that a lot of those plants that I mark at their perfect market stage are not going to survive to make seeds. They're going to die of something. So that's why you want to mark a lot of those. This is going to be your planting stock, and that's why you're marking them. As those plants grow on, in our climate, it's usually a very good idea to strip the bottom leaves after they have begun to bolt. The bottom leaves are where several diseases can start up. The worst two being botrytis and sclerotinia. And they're related. This is white mold and gray mold. White mold is sclerotinia. In my climate, if I overhead water a lettuce seed patch, I can expect about 80% of the seed plants to die of sclerotinia. And for that reason, we use drip irrigation. We start the plants off with overhead irrigation until they're established, and we've got, we do our between row weeding. Once the mechanical weeding is done, we lay down drip tape. And at some point, when I begin to see a lot of senescent leaves on the bottom, we will strip a foot of leaves off of the bolting plant. Those leaves aren't really contributing to the health of the plant. What they are doing is providing a lot of spots where the spores of sclerotinia or botrytis can germinate on senescing tissue. They grow through the senescing tissue into the stem of the plant. Now you've got a stem infection, and that's going to kill the plant. So the best thing you can do to keep sclerotinia from attacking your plants is giving them a lot of air circulation and not allowing any infected leaves to grow that fungus from the leaf into the stem, which means you need to watch the leaves. It's very common for sclerotinia to start after the flower petals drop. The flower petals drop off the head down into the plant, and they get stuck in the axils of the leaves. And that becomes a piece of dead tissue for sclerotinia spores to sprout on. And in that case, they are going to be sprouting, germinating right up next to the stem of the plant. And that can become a lethal infection pretty quickly. So this leaf stripping process is not something I would do if I could get away with not doing it. There are some varieties that when the leaves or when the plant bolts, the leaves just kind of dry down and they drop off. And in that case, that's really not a problem. But with lettuce types where the leaves stay firmly clasped to the stem as it bolts, those in particular, like romaines, let's say, those in particular would benefit from having their lower leaves stripped off. There are some people who trellis their lettuce plants. That is, they put up wire to hold the plants in the bed, or they'll even sandwich rows of lettuce between wires so that the plants don't blow over. As the plants get tall, especially once they get loaded with seed, and double especially if it rains and it's heavy, plants will tend to fall over. And if they, once they fall over, they start to rot pretty quickly because the air circulation gets bad. I don't know. The plants don't drain very well when they've fallen over. They're leaning on each other when they fall over. I personally have never trellised lettuce plants, but my friends at Uprising Seed do, because it's so windy where they are, and it's the only way to keep their plants upright. So I applaud them for doing it. I avoid trellising most of the time because I'm a lazy wild gardener. But anyway, my alternative is to plant. I now really enjoy planting my lettuce into soil that has not been tilled. That is to say, I like my seedling rooted into untilled soil. And I find my plants stand up way better since I do that. In situations where the soil has been tilled and I have a lettuce plant standing up there in the wind with a heavy head, it just seems like the whole plant just wants to lean over because the soil, I don't know, because it formed a root system that was more like a bottle brush. Whereas in my no-till situations that I'm using now, if the root tips of that transplant are on the untilled soil, those roots will follow wormholes and other insect holes down into the untilled soil in a very taproot-like situation. Doesn't look nearly like a bottle brush. It looks more like a wild lettuce. And those plants really do stand up much better. Okay, so anyway, now you got a tall plant there. It's in full bloom. It takes about 3 weeks from the time a flower opens to when its seed is ripe. Of course, that depends on your temperature. Probably faster for you in Quebec than for me here in Oregon. The big question is, as the lettuce head goes from being flowers to being seeds, it starts to fluff out like a dandelion. And you begin to get the impression that the wind could blow those seeds away. And, if you had enough wind, it probably could. The nice thing about domesticated lettuce is the seed cap holding the seeds in a domesticated lettuce stays firm. And that cap holds the seeds and keeps it from blowing away. It's actually a marker of domestication. In a wild lettuce, the cap that holds the seed opens up, and there is nothing holding that seed there, and they blow away very easily. So that's one of the things that our forebears did for us. They made lettuce that holds onto its seeds. So that seed is actually going to hold on there a lot better than you probably think. And this maturing of the lettuce head is a practice in not jumping too fast, because you would really like to have as much of that seed attain ripeness before you touch it. There's always going to be a large portion of seed on the head that is not ripe, even as the ripest seed begins to drop off. When about 75% of the seed head is fluffed out, that's a pretty good time to make your first move on harvest. There's at least 3 ways to go about the lettuce harvest. I'm going to start with the real old-timey method. The original lettuce harvesting method, and this is still done on high-quality seeds, is to go through the field at that point when about 75% of the head has become fluff. And you put that head in a bag, or you bend it over into some sort of a bin, and you massage the head, and then bang it, you knock it a little bit, and you are just knocking the seeds off into a container. I've seen people using some sort of it almost looks like a fruit harvesting vest. There's some sort of a vest I've seen pictures of people using them where they stick the lettuce head in there and they can shake it. I don't have one of those. So I've always used a Rubbermaid bin for this process. And I sort of tip the head over and lift the bin up and just kind of rattle it back and forth to knock off the seeds that want to come off. And then you leave that plant standing. It's important not to break the plant, and it's challenging. The other challenge is every time you're doing this one head at a time. Every time you shake a head, you're getting a nose full of lettuce fluff. Your whole body becomes covered in lettuce fluff. Your hands become covered in white sap from the lettuce heads. You become very sticky. But at the end of that, what you have is you have a container, a bucket, a bin, or a bag full of pure seeds along with its fluff. And that is going to be the easiest seed cleaning job you ever had. That right there. That is very straightforward to clean. You have 100% mature seed because none of the immature seed has fallen off. And when you're done cleaning that seed, it will be pristine and at 99.9% germination. That's the highest quality way to do it. But you have to visit every seed head, and you have to come back around and do it again. Typically, you shake it 2 times, and then the last time through, you're essentially just, using a combine or just cutting the seed plants, just taking that head and just banging the hell out of it, and then you throw it away after your 3rd harvest. So that gets you this really nice, clean, high-quality seed with a lot of work up front in the field when it's hot, when you have a zillion other things to harvest. It usually requires you to have a crew helping you do it. I've never found that I could actually do my whole production by myself. And by the way, I should say, one time I did try to develop a backpack seed vacuum by reversing a seed blower, a leaf blower, and turning it into a seed sucker with a tube on it and a head on this tube where I would bend the lettuce heads into this. It was basically a 5-gallon oil jug that had been fastened onto a 3-inch vacuum tube. And I would put the heads in there and I would massage them off and shake it, and it would all get sucked into the vacuum cleaner. And so all that seed would end up on my back, and the fluff would end up in the backpack rather than going into my nose. But still, but now, I had one device, and I was the only one who would use it. And so I had suddenly created a job only I could do, and I didn't like that. So I gave up on that. The much more efficient method is to go through the field when the plants are at 75% full seed set, and you just cut the plants down at the ground. And you lay those heads on a piece of permeable fabric that will not collect water should it get rained on. And we buy this fabric. It's a geotextile fabric. We can buy it in 100-foot rolls or 300-foot rolls. And you can roll these rolls out right alongside your lettuce plants. And you could cut the plants and lay them down with their heads on this fabric to after ripen. In this case, you would leave those plants there for about 7 to 10 days, depending on your weather. It'd be a bummer if it got rained on. You can try to cover that in some way in the event of rain. But once again, this is why we like it in the West where it's dry, where we can do this in the field and just lay it on the ground. Okay. The other option, that you're going to have to thresh those heads. But before I get to the threshing, the other option is to, rather than cut those plants off at the ground level, you can pull them up by their roots. And this, in fact, is how I've always done it. I think I'm the guy who started doing this. I don't know if anybody else does it or not. But we go through the field and we pull the plants up by the roots and lay their heads on the fabric. And you can stack these plants up. It's not a single layer. You can stack them up, maybe 3 heads high, possibly even 4 heads high. And you can put the heads in from each side. So you can have stems sticking out the left side and stems sticking out the right side. And all the heads are going down the middle on a piece of fabric. While this lettuce is out in the field after ripening for a week, the plants that have the roots on them will continue to flower for days. The plants that you cut off will pretty much stop flowering almost right away. The plants that have the roots on them will continue to ripen their seed until the plant dries out. The plants that you cut the root off of, once that plant dries out, it's pretty much done. And you're going to end up with at least 10% of the seed is going to be immature, at least. Maybe 20% will be immature. And you'll have to blow that seed out. On the plants that have the roots on them, over 90% of the seed will ripen in that case. So you will have less immature seed to blow out at the end. What is the yield difference between the two? I don't know, 10%, 15%, something like that. What's the quality difference between the two? The plants that have the roots on them have a higher germ rate. So you can make your choices based on those two methods. Now, when it comes time to thresh, this is when you can make a lot of work for yourself on the seed cleaning end of things if you don't do this right. You want to thresh before the plants have become brittle dry. On the day that you think you should thresh, we go out, we check the plants. Usually they're getting pretty brittle dry on the top, which is what's got my attention. Down on the ground, they'll feel moist. And so we flip them over. We just do a flip, head over heels, from where it was laying onto a plastic tarp. So now the seed head is on a plastic tarp. The head has flipped 180 degrees, if you can visualize this. And we do this with we have these sticks that we use. You can pick up 4 or 5 plants at a time and flip them over. We just go down the field, flipping them from the tarp that they have been laying on for the last 10 days, flipping it onto a nice, clean plastic tarp.
Do you have to be careful about the dirt on the roots?
You don't want the dirt to get in it. It's true. Yes. It's part of the art is keeping dirt out of the whole process.
So you're not cutting the roots or anything at this point. You're just doing it with skill.
No, I've left them on. That is another way to do it. I have done that. I have gone down, and while they were laying in their original position, I've gone down with a chainsaw, actually, and chainsawed off the roots. If you use, anything other than a chainsaw, you end up banging a bunch of seed off of it when you try to cut the roots off. The problem with removing the roots is the heads are kind of fragile at this point. And the more you jostle them, the more seed will fall off. And if the seed, I'm trying to minimize the amount of seed that drops off onto that first piece of fabric. The reason is the fabric where it's been laying there for a week is covered with mouse turds. All the field mice and voles have been visiting that windrow for the last week, and they have pooped on the tarp. So if you just try to thresh it onto that tarp, you now have mixed your beautiful seed with mouse poop. And that it will be a new cleaning problem for you to do. And you'll have to do it with the whole damn lot. If you do what I said, where you flip it over 180 degrees from where it was after ripening onto a new clean tarp, you let it lay there for an hour or so, and then the bottom dries out very quickly. It's just moist from being on the ground. While that's drying out, you can pick up the seed that dropped off while it was after ripening, and you will find that it is less than 10, in the end, it is less than 10%. It might only be 5% of the total weight ends up on that initial tarp. But that's where all the mouse poop is. And if you want that 10%, you can save it. I mean, you can get the mouse poop out. But it's a lot easier to do it if you're only doing it with 10% of your volume rather than 100% of your volume. See what I'm saying? Because you're going to be passing that seed through a special screen just for the mouse poop. And if you can avoid doing that, you're saving yourself a screening. Mouse poop causes all kind of trouble. It comes in every size. I mean, it does. There's big poops that stays with your big seed, and there's little tiny itty bitty poops that stay with your little seed. There's no escaping it. Mouse poop is a problem. And if you can avoid all that by going head to head and shaking each individual head, right? I told you how to avoid this problem. Okay, the other problem that you want to avoid when you're threshing, you would like to do this when the plants are not brittle dry. If there's a little bit of flexibility left in the tips of the stems, it will keep those stems from breaking into a zillion little sticks. And a zillion little sticks is what drives most people crazy when they get toward the end of lettuce seed cleaning. If you do this at like 11 o'clock in the morning, between 11 and 1, in my climate, between 11 and 1, the lettuce plants are just the right texture. You can bang on them with your stick, the seed drops off, but the head does not drop into a zillion little sticks. If I leave that there till like 3:30 and I go out and I do exactly the same thing, I have a zillion little sticks mixed with my seeds. So it's a timing thing, and it's got to do with humidity. And, the easiest way to clean seeds is not to get it dirty in the first place. The easiest way to get the weed seeds out of crop seeds is to not let the weed seeds get in there. So now you have threshed the heads. The seed is dropped onto the clean tarp. You flip all those dead plant bodies off of the tarp. Gather it up. You now have a mixture of lettuce and lettuce fluff and leaves and flower petals and aphids and ladybugs and lacewings and hoverfly larvae. They're all in there. If you just let that sit there for a second, you'll see all these insects crawl to the top of the pile. So what you need to do before you do any other cleaning, you need to take that seed on its tarp and put it in a shady place to dry. Do not dry it in the sun. If you dry it in direct sunlight and you get the temperature of that seed above 85 degrees, with a lot of lettuce seeds, it puts it into what's called induced dormancy. And that seed will not germinate for at least 6 months thereafter. Very common. The trait that makes this happen turns out to be a single gene trait. And you can breed that out of the lettuce. But almost all the heirloom lettuces have not had that bred out of them. So they will go dormant if you get them hot. If you look up, if you ever, or just cruise around looking up lettuce patents, one of the traits they will describe in a lettuce patent is whether or not it's susceptible to induced dormancy, thermal dormancy. Okay, so anyway, you want to always dry your seeds in the shade, all seeds. I mean, you can dry them in the sun for a little while, but you better be right on it. I mean, if you want to heat them up, fine. Heat them up, stir them up, and bring them into the shade. But allowing any kind of seed to get hot invites dormancy. It's also true in brassicas. You can make your Brassica johnsia completely dormant for 6 months by overheating it. So, as that seed dries, all those insects start crawling out. It'll freak you out at first. We lay it out in a smooth layer on the tarp, no more than 1 inch or 2 thick. We weight the edges of the tarp down using T-posts so the wind will not pick it up and turn it over. Very important. As it's laying there, the insects get all bummed out by the heat and dryness, and they just start crawling out, and they'll crawl off into the grass. Once the seeds are dry, you put them in a bin. They've got a lot of fluff attached to them at this point. I use a stick, a threshing stick, to stir that bin vigorously with my stick. And as I do that, all this fluff comes pouring out of it up into my face. So you want to pay attention to which way the wind's blowing. After I've done that stirring process, I generally pour that lettuce from one bin into another bin while standing on a tarp out in an open space, and where the wind will blow the fluff away. And I just pour it from one, I'm using 18-gallon Rubbermaid bins, or maybe 14 gallons, depending on how much it is, usually 18. And I'm just pouring it from one bin to the next, back and forth, and letting the fluff blow away and not losing any seed. You should not be losing any seed in this process. If you see that fluff is blowing away with seeds attached to it, then you need to rub that again. Rub it more, stir it, stomp on it, put it out on a tarp, walk around on it. Those little pappus fluffs that are attached to each lettuce seed will break off once it's dry. They just snap off, but you need to rub it to some extent to make that happen. And you cannot fully clean the lettuce seed until you get rid of all the pappus. As long as there are little projections sticking out of the lettuce seed, you'll be thwarted from getting that clean. So rubbing the lettuce seed is part of cleaning it. Another way to rub it, by the way, this is actually what we do a lot. I take a couple of pieces of lath, just thin boards, and I hold them, or maybe even 3 pieces, and I hold them in my fingers in such a way, stick them down in a bin, and I stir with that so that there are 3 laths going back and forth through the lettuce bin, parallel with each other, rubbing the seed. So I just move it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So after that field cleaning, where I've gotten rid of the fluff, there are still a lot of things in there. There's probably leaves in there. There's some dead insects in there. There's lots of sticks in there still. I pass it over a screen. We generally use a 3/16 inch screen to do this. You could do it with a 1/4 inch screen. If you try to do it with an 1/8 inch screen, your screen is going to get kind of plugged up because of all the big stuff. So I'd say, a 1/4 or a 3/16 inch screen will take out all the leaves and all the big sticks. The next screen is a 1/8 inch screen, and that will take out flower capsules and more sticks. At this point, I would winnow it again. After the 1/8 inch screen, winnow it. A lot of things will blow out. Then I put it on and I'm going to tell you how to do this with just a piece of window screen to start with. Put it on a piece of window screen, which in U.S. measurements is about a 1/16 square. And you shake it on that. And with some lettuces, all the lettuce will go through that screen. Every bit of it, especially modern mini lettuces. The smaller the lettuce, the smaller the seed. The old heirloom lettuces, about half the seed will want to stay on top of a window screen, and about half of it will go through, which is fine with me. Any plant that produces seeds with a big range of size, calendula comes to mind. Anything that's like that, zinnia is also this way. It's sometimes a good practice to split the seed in half, the big half and the small half. And I always did this with lettuce until I'm going to tell you how to do this with really good screens in just a second. But assuming you don't have a complete screen set, and I think a lot of people listening will be in this situation, by putting it on the on the window screen, you divide your work in half. Everything that stays on the top of that screen, now all you have to do is remove the bigger stuff. And you'll find that's very easy by winnowing it. What goes through the screen has most of your problems in it. And this is what we commonly call the crippy crap. It's stuff that's smaller than the seed. So you need to find a screen that bottoms out all that small stuff that is smaller than the seed. And my favorite screen for doing that is a 1/17 inch round hole screen. That is a plate screen. In my experience, things like insect frass, small dirt, what is all the crippy crap? Little mouse turds will all go through that 17th inch screen. And what stays on top of it will be remarkably clean. And you'll winnow that. And what goes through the 17th-inch screen, winnow that, and then put it back on the screen and do it again. So this is called a repeat. Sometimes the stuff that goes through the screen is full of fine crap and some unlucky seeds who manage to get through the hole. So if you winnow that, the stuff that went through the 17, you winnow it, all the really fine stuff will blow away. And the lettuce seeds will stay behind, along with crippy crap that's close to the same size as the lettuce seed. You throw it back on the screen, shake it again, 80% of the lettuce seed will stay on top, 20% will go through, along with all the crap. And then you repeat it again. And each time you use that 17th in this way, you're just getting pure seed staying on top, and the crippy crap is going through. But you just have to repeat it a few times, because every now and then, some of those lettuce seeds are going to happen to fall through the hole. But 80% of them will stay on top. So you just do this repetition with the same screen, and you'll see that you recover all your seed. So that only requires 2 screens. Well, I consider those first screens we used sort of scalpers. After the 1/8-inch screen, you're really dealing with the seed at that point, and you can get it very clean with just a window screen and a 1/17 round hole plate. Amazingly clean. I did it commercially with just those 2 screens for many years. However, at some point, you're going to ask me what I would have told myself when I was a young seed grower. And I'm going to just tell you right now, buy yourself $1,000 worth of screens, hand screens. And I'll tell you later where you can buy them. Just go ahead and buy yourself a set of screens. And the reason for doing that is I can eliminate a lot of problems just by passing lettuce seed. It can be so dirty you can't believe it. You can take it straight from the 1/8-inch screen and put it on this beautiful screen called a 1/26 by 1/2 inch herringbone plate. That's a lot to remember. 1/26 is the width of the slot. A 1/2 inch long is the length of the slot. And these slots are cut into this metal plate in a herringbone pattern. And when you put the lettuce on that, it is going to take out so many problems, and only the lettuce seed is going to slip through. It's amazing. But I didn't have one of these screens until about 6 years ago. So everybody can get a big jump if they go out and buy one of those screens for doing their lettuce. What that screen removes that the other screens do not are little fine sticks that came from the seed head and little green balls, which are essentially immature flower buds that are coming out of the lettuce head. Little green balls drive people crazy. They're almost exactly the same diameter as the lettuce seed, and they will go through almost any hole that the lettuce seed will go through. But they will not go through that 1/26-inch slot. Between each screening, you should winnow it. And then at the very end, you winnow it again. My pattern is always starting in the field, winnow, screen, winnow, screen, winnow, screen, each time using a different size screen. but each size screen being interrupted by a winnowing step. That's going to get you cleanest fastest. Seed cleaning is all about density and size. The screens sort things out by size, and the wind sorts things out by density. So by alternating between the two, you get to the final end fast.
And so that walks us through lettuce, for all the different stages and different screens.
Yeah. Okay, so you see, it's a bifurcating kind of thing, right? It's like you have all these choices. Do I cut the plants? Do I pull the plants? Do I shake the plants? If you shook the plants, you'd skip all the rest of it. You would hardly even use a screen. You know, you'd hardly use a screen if you shook the plants off to start with. So, but you know, it's a time constraint, and seed growing is like this. You know, it's like, am I going to do it clean now, or am I going to clean it later? You know, it's kind of how it is. But the easiest thing is to try to keep dirt and sticks and trouble out of your seeds. Okay, so that's lettuce.
I wonder if we should save zinnia for another time. At this point, I've been using a lot of your time, and we've gone detailed to this, and I have loved it. But I wonder if we should start wrapping this up so you can get onto your wet weather. So thanks again to Frank Morton for being on the podcast and these great conversations. The Seed Growers Podcast is produced in part by no-till growers with the help of our sponsors, the Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security and the Organic Seed Alliance. And if you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, now's the time. There's another episode next week. Until then, happy farming. This is a great episode about seed saving. I guess I've cut that part out maybe.